Hello YouTube. The wreck of the fishing trawler Kartli was the last maritime emergency in the history of the Soviet Union. And the reason I'm going to talk about this today is because of the cause of this tragedy, the killer waves. And I'll get to it. But let me present the full story, because I'm afraid we're going to see more and more so-called killer waves or rogue waves out in the open ocean and closer to the shores. Well, the Kerch sea fishing trawler Kartli crashed off the west coast of Great Britain on December 18, 1991, a week before the collapse of the Soviet Union itself. The Coast Guard and the Navy of the United Kingdom took part in the rescue operation. Because of the turbulent frenzy of events that took place in the country of the port of registry, few people remember this tragedy now, but 4 Soviet civilian sailors died in it. But even fewer people remember that the cause of what happened was a killer wave, a very rare natural phenomenon that is still poorly understood, and you will see later in this video as I look to various hypotheses as to the reason for the existence of killer waves. The Kartli belonged to the fishing freezing trawlers of the tropic type. With a length of 80 meters and a displacement of 3,250 tons, it could safely fish even in the vastness of the ocean, which they did. It was practically a floating factory. According to the reference book of standard vessels of the fishing fleet, ships of this type were intended not only for fishing with a trawl, but also directly on the vessel. The catch could be frozen and processed into fish oil, feed flour, or technical grease. Kartli sailed on its last voyage in on December 14, 1991, from the British port of Lerwick, located on the Scottish Islands. 400 tons of frozen fish had to be delivered to the Black Sea Kerch port through the Bulgarian port of Burgas. There were 51 crew members on board. On the day of departure, the weather was normal and nothing for shadow trouble. A few days before the departure, they learned on the radio that the Belovetskaya Agreement had been signed, so the USSR was no more. The uncertainty scared and made crew members worried. The crew was not even bothered by bad luck, because they forgot their documents at the port and had to return for them. Well, the storm in which the ship got into the evening of December 17 caught the ship near the Scottish Islands. The ship was ready for such a storm. It was only necessary to put the ship's nose to the wave in order to pass them across. However, this required constant management and strict duty. At midnight, the captain was replaced on watch by the second navigator and helmsman sailor. There were 15 minutes left until the end of the watch when at 3:45 the ship shuddered from a terrible blow. It was as if the ship had stopped abruptly. It was the impact of the killer wave. And these natural phenomena have not yet been fully studied. Seasoned sailors have long told stories about such waves. Scientists were able to officially record them for the first time and find out that these are waves of a new type, but only in 1995. The causes of their occurrence and the exact methods of tracking are still unknown. Experts suggest that killer or rogue waves are so-called wandering waves, which have incredible power. Unlike tsunamis, they become higher not only in shallow water, but also in the open sea. The height of such waves reaches 20 to 30 meters, sometimes more. Having encountered such a wave, the vessel is very likely to crash, because the force of water pressure can reach up to almost 10 atmospheres. With that Soviet ship, the mechanic Sechin witnessed such a wave, and when he went out on the deck to throw out the garbage. He was saved by the fact that he was on the left side and the blow came from behind to the right. As a result, the whole ship was underwater and Sechin was not washed overboard because he managed to grab a welded rack on the deck and hold on until the sea subsided. The blow fell exactly in the center and the ship received terrible damage. On the right side of the superstructure, there was a huge hole of 15 square meters and a dent of 30 meters. The bulwarks and all the units installed there, such as the anchor winch, which were bolted with thick steel bolts, were torn off from the front and rear parts of the vessel. Immediately after that, some crew members rushed to the boat deck, where they tried to use the rescue boats. People panicked so much that in the end 4 life rafts were swept into the sea. Later, the rescuers took them out of the water. People who say, crew members who jump over. They took them out of from the water, frozen and having lost all hope. Meanwhile, in the engine room, the mechanics, who immediately after the impact lost contact with the main wheelhouse cabin, they did not run away anywhere. They threw all their strength into maintaining the operation of the machines. The last instruction from the bridge that came to the compartment was to full reverse. At the same time, the steering wheels jammed due to the damage. This and the support of the engine in working condition saved the ship for some time. It continued to go at a low speed against the waves, meaning backwards, avoiding capsizing. By this time, the third navigator organized the others, and the ship began to fight for dear life. Who knows what would have happened if the Drapa oil tanker had not passed by? They were able to be contacted through the usual walkie-talkie, which was used to communicate on the ship. The tanker's captain began to drift nearby and called for help. At 5:20 a.m., 6 rescue helicopters and a coordination plane took off from the shore to help the trawler. The British Navy vessel Alma, which was passing nearby, sailed to the area. While the crew, emboldened by the hope, fought for the buoyancy of the vessel, the mechanics were able to keep the engine running until 6. However, after that, they had to be stopped, because due to the constant load, the motor began to overheat, and there was a high probability of a fire. Fortunately, helicopters were able to fly up to the ship, which began to evacuate people. At this time, the tanker stood to the side, covering the immobilized trawler with its hull. Another helicopter was filming those fleeing on raft from the waters. By 10:30, the rescue operation was over. Everyone was taken off the Kartli, including the ship's cat. As a result of the tragedy, 4 of the 51 crew members were killed: first officer, helmsman, second navigator, and also a waiter, the ship's waiter. She fell overboard while trying to board the raft. The trawler Kartli was left to drift in the waves. The vessel was last seen on the evening of December 18 from the air, heading towards a strong current. Radars never detected it on the surface of the sea again. Never again. Now let's jump to another time. A wave with a height of 17.6 meters was recorded by a buoy installed by the Marine Labs Research Company about 7 kilometers from Vancouver Islands in British Columbia. Ukleelet. This is how the monstrous wave was named after the nearby coast. Well, the record-breaking rogue wave recorded in November 2020 measured at almost 58 feet, 17.6 meters, in comparison to surrounding waves of around 20 feet or 6 meters. Blowing the original proportions out of the water, the wave mysteriously surged in November 2020, but only recently scientists were convinced that the phenomenon was not imagined. So they presented their confirmation, so to say, in early February 2021. In the open sea, waves of such proportions occur once every 1300 years, according to Johann Geimbrich, who led the research from the University of Victoria. The ultraviolet wave is not the highest among those that have been ever recorded or observed on the surface of the world oceans. Scientists consider it a record in terms of relative height. The waves that rolled in front and behind were 3 times lower. I think average was 6 meters. The authors of the publication cite as an example the Dropner wave with the height of 25.6 meters, which was recorded in 1995 in the North Sea off the coast of Norway. The maximum height of the surrounding waves was at that time about 12 meters. Waves similar to the Canadian and Norwegian, the scientists call them rogue waves, or killer waves, and for several decades they have been trying to figure out where this come from. But you know what, there is no clear understanding yet. I gotta tell you that in my books about observations by Soviet cosmonauts, I cite 2 of them who had observed such waves from the orbit. It was an incredible sight. Anyway, rogue waves, this is not a tsunami. They suddenly appear as a foam, and then a blue-black wall from the ocean surface collapse on the decks of ships and disappear to no one knows where. There was a time already in the 20th century when scientists did not believe in rogue waves at all, despite numerous testimonies and even documentary photographs. But this is not something that surprises me or my audience, I think. Well, here's another testimony. It was stormy but not much, said Philippe Lejour, first mate of the Esolagendok oil tanker. Suddenly a huge wave appeared from the stern, many times higher than all the others. It covered the whole ship, even the masts disappeared under the water. The tanker remained afloat. The crew of the tanker was lucky. And while the water was rolling across the deck, Philippe managed to grab a camera and shoot the receding wave. According to his estimates, the wave shot up to at least 30 meters high. It happened in 1980 to the east of the coast of South Africa. On the morning of February 7, 1933, a wave with a height of 34 meters, the size of a 12-story building, it hit the U.S. Navy ship Ramapo, which was en route from Manila to San Diego. The duty officer managed to figure it out, what happened. Now scientists are ready to believe that waves of 50 meters can be expected in the vastness of the ocean. By the way, rogue waves are visible from satellites, but the images taken from orbit do not add clarity. Some giant waves gradually stand up in rows of 3, 4, or even 5, and without falling off, overcome thousands of kilometers. So they travel in the ocean. Others rise suddenly and just as suddenly disappear without a trace. The height of the wave depends on the strength of the wind, on how long it blows, and on the area of open water. For example, a hurricane with a strength of 12 points, which is very rare, sweeping across the widest water area of 17,700 kilometers from Panama to Malaysia in 1 hour is able to catch up with waves, the average height of which will be 4.2 meters. Further calculations show that during the day the waves will rise by 14.1 meters, but in the end, at least for a week, they will not rise above 20.7 meters. Giant waves discovered from space do not fit into such parameters in any way. They are 25 meters or more. Some mathematicians try to explain the phenomenon using the nonlinear Schrödinger equation. It is believed that the ultra-high waves are formed as a result of the so-called dispersion focusing, from the fact that the traveling wave begins to absorb the energy of neighboring ones, well, it doesn't turn out quite smoothly. Others unsuccessfully attract equations describing chaotic processes that are akin to those that shake the global financial markets. So they're trying to use equations to explain phenomena that is very hard or impossible to explain. Some still actually blame the currents. Giant waves can indeed often be found where winds slow down fast ocean currents. Maybe that's why there's some kind of dams suddenly weakening the winds, release the water which rushes in on monstrous waves. Such a mechanism is not excluded, but it does not explain the appearance of wandering giant waves where there are no currents at all. Perhaps the special relief of the ocean floor, which organizes the superposition of some waves on others, makes its contribution. Scientists who adhere to unconventional views believe that in certain areas of the ocean there are local gravitational fluctuations. Simply put, gravity decreases or increases dramatically. So there is a depression or there is a rise. Some very serious scientists, for example, from the National Australian University, recognized authorities in the field of studying giant waves assure us that in addition to giant rise, depressions can really occur, such extended dips on the surface of the water. They're called inverted waves. There are also enough stories about this phenomenon, although there is no documentary evidence, and extensive gravitational anomalies are not so fantastic. In some places, the mirror surface of the world ocean has bulges and concavities, several dozens of meters deep. This is visible to astronauts from orbit. They were the first to notice such miracles, the existence of which scientists explained by the difference in gravity. What if the difference can move as a result of some processes in the bowels of the oceans and launch giant waves? We do not know. We do not know much about the oceans. Research is ongoing. Scientists intend to understand the nature of rogue waves and learn to predict their appearance. And they give recommendations, for example, to oil workers to increase the height of the platforms above the sea level by 20%, to transport workers to strengthen cargo hatches, and of course to sea tourists to learn to pray. It is possible that over the past quarter century, encounters with rogue or killer waves have ended tragically for more than 200 ships, including 20 huge unsinkable tankers that broke in half. And if you believe the research conducted by Professor Neil Ahmediev from the Australian National University Research School of Physics and Engineering, at any given time 10 giant water waves are rising somewhere in the world. Now, the area of my focused research, the Arctic. Killer waves can appear in the Barents Sea every week, but no one will know about it since there is no tracking system in Russia. This opinion was shared by Stanislav Myslenkov in the interview with Russian media. He is the senior researcher at the Department of Oceanology at Moscow State University. Stanislav Myslenkov explained what is the peculiarity of the occurrence of such a phenomenon. Regular waves are formed by the wind. Their height logically depends on the strength of the wind. Killer waves are formed due to various factors. A current is involved, several waves from different directions should converge, a coincidence. That's why killer waves are so rare. They're found in different regions of the world ocean. And, of course, in the Arctic too. So stay tuned to further information about killer waves. I'm sure we'll hear more about wonderful, incomprehensible phenomena, and it's maybe not so wonderful, from the bottom of our oceans, like USOs, like unusual life forms. If you look at the Mariana Trench and other areas that are of keen interest to major world powers of our planet. So stay tuned, and if you like my research, please kindly support me. You'll find the links in the description to this video. Please subscribe to my channel and please tell others. Thank you.